When it comes to your favorite brandy brand, how much better is an XO to the VS? And is it worth you spending all that money on upgrading? This is a video that I've been really looking forward to making. So join me. Let's find out. Hello, brandy lovers. Welcome back to the channel. But for those of you that are new around these parts, let me just take a quick second to say hello. My name's Steve the Barman, bartender for nearly 30 years, rum lover for like 27, 28 years, brandy lover for 25 years, except I've never really deep dived into brandy because, you know, not many people do. So this is what this channel is all about. And if you're excited by that, if you want to learn a bit more about brandy, then join me on our journey and we can do all this together. So if that sounds like fun, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But don't forget, I've got 5 other YouTube channels, 4 rum channels and another cocktail channel. They will all be linked in the description below. All of them have got their own specific niches. So look, how am I going to compare these brandies? And in this case, Courvoisier. I've got the VS and the VSOP and the XO. Well, in all honesty, this is a little bit of a trick video because even at this stage in my brandy's journey, I know that there's a flipping huge difference between drinking that neat, the XO, and drinking that. I mean, when it comes to drinking these things, there is only ever going to be one winner. But I think that's the only way I can really do this video is in try and convey the different tasting notes and how they are different. Now look, let's face it, I know there are many people around the world that are going to buy a bottle of VS and quite happily sip it neat. Being totally honest, this is Mummy Barman's bottle. Mummy Barman buys this. There's always a bottle of this in the house, and this is her neat sipper. But also, I mean, it's just, I can only speak to the UK here, but if you went out to a pub or bar, simply because of prices, even if they do have a brandy behind the bar that you can sip on, the chances are it is going to be a VS of one of the big brands of that. Or you might be lucky, and it just for some unknown reason, the big VSOP go-to is actually Remy Martin. But that's if you're extremely lucky. But I think in brandy world, out of all the spirit categories out there, certainly from my experience of it, this is the one spirit category where you can quite easily tell the difference between an expensive brandy and a cheaper brandy. I mean, even in rum world, I know so many people, myself included, that have been, you know, tricked by a £30 bottle of rum, thinking it might be sort of an £80, £90 bottle of rum. You know, it's because of the different barrels, because of how rum and whiskey and all that are aged, it is slightly different to brandy. So you haven't got those nuances. So you can normally tell, even at my experience level, you can normally tell an older brandy and it's actually a little bit more refined than a younger brandy. But there is also a caveat here as well, because how I am in rum world, where if a rum gets too old for me, sort of like a 10, 12, 15-year-old rum, for instance, there is that to a certain extent in brandy. I know a few people where an XO can be, you know, a little bit too harsh because it has spent, especially if it's cognac, it has spent those 10 years in a wooden barrel. Now, the thing to note here, 10 years in a sort of a virgin oak barrel is very different to 10 years in rum world in a wet, soggy cask in the middle of the Caribbean. They are two completely different things from my mind. So even for me, an XO will taste a lot younger than a 10, 12, 15-year-old rum. But there's also another little thing coming out to play here, because I can't claim any authority to this, but I know it happens. Certainly within the more mass-produced brands, a lot of brands do add a touch of sugar to their XOs to actually make them more palatable. And it's the same in rum, it's the same in whiskey world, you know. It happens, of course it does. So, you know, the chances are actually one of the big mainstream XOs, your Courvoisiers, your Hennessy's, your Martels, you know, your Heinz, all those big brands, chances are they're actually going to be more to a lot of people's palates than your lesser known brandies and cognacs, the smaller brands that won't add any sugar. But the flip on this whole scenario is that actually, you know, many people won't mix an XO. Many people actually won't mix a VSOP, even though these days that's what a VSOP is created for. It's just a better mixing rum to most brands and to most people. And unless you go to a really high-end hotel bar, you are never going to find a brandy cocktail where someone's used a 140, 150 pound bottle of XO in the brandy cocktail, the chances are it's going to be a VS or a VSOP. So actually comparing these as mixes is not really, it's pointless. And I think this is one of the big contradictions in my mind that I'm looking forward to exploring more, because the same probably should be said for rum and whiskey, except the weird thing is I really don't buy into that with rum. I think some of the younger rums are actually really, really good for sipping neat as well. And it's just this weird contradiction in my head, whereas I've always seen brandy as the better, the classier spirit, if you like, or I don't know what the word is, but that's my opinions of brandy compared to rum. You know, I'll quite happily, if we're talking about rum, I'll quite happily sip on that at sort of £30 a bottle. I've got no qualms about that. And that's just essentially like a 4, 5, 6-year-old rum in there. Whereas I probably wouldn't dream of sipping a 2, a 3, a 4-year-old, a VS or a VSOP brandy neat. And that's just something I've got to work through in my mind. Now that I've got that whole spiel out of the way, am I about to prove myself wrong? Because this could quite possibly be the first time that I've done this with brandy since that day in the story in my first video. I don't think I've ever gone up in a range since that Hennessy tasting day. I don't think I've ever tried the 3 base brandies side by side. And just doing that, just very quickly in between sort of cuts there, wow, there is a huge difference. Now, would I drink this VS, this Courvoisier VS Neat? I don't think I would. It's very rough around the edges. It's got quite a lot of burn. And this is the thing in my mind that I think is opposite in rum. I find the burn in rum in a lot older rums, in more heavily aged, in barrels where that does come out. And yet with brandy, I find the burn in the younger stuff. And I can't explain that at this precise moment. It's just how I historically think of it. So just trying the VS, yes, there is this lighter fruity note to it. I actually get a lot of apricot coming off on this. Yes, obviously you get these grapes and that, more and a hint of sort of rosé wine. That would be kind of that sort of blush rosé wine. That's the sort of aroma there, but it is apricot. But then on the taste, I do kind of get this oaky, even to a certain extent, well, caramelly kind of vibe coming on. But even to a certain extent, like a little hint of chocolate. But there is this kind of rough burn over it. And this is why, it lends itself to mixing. Because, I'll be honest, I have this as a brandy and ginger because it's always in the house. And I've got no problems with that at all. It's a delicious brandy and ginger, but I just wouldn't drink this neat. Now, when we step up to the VS, already for me, there is that golfing quality. All of a sudden, all these flavors are just rounded up. My eyes light up now. The harshness, I mean, these are all 40% ABVs, I think. I'm pretty sure they're all 40%. There's no ABV on the, yes, there is. There's 40 there. I'm pretty sure the XO is 40. You do, for me, this is how I define it. Actually, I find more burn on these than a 40% rum that I know hasn't been sweetened. I do find that. But even this VS, if this was given to me as a neat sipper, an entry point into a spirit category, yes, I would enjoy it, but I don't think it's enough for me to go, oh, wow, I want to explore this category more. It's delicious. It's nice. I get the similar sort of apricot vibes, the similar sort of toffee caramel vibes coming off there. A bit more wood. And then on the taste, there is more of this bitter toffee, but actually real juicy stone fruit, real juicy dried fruit. The grapes, the grape is there. It's like this cooked wine. That's the best way I can kind of describe this, but a kind of a lovely concentrated wine, if you like. I mean, it's delicious. It's going to have many fans. But now let's step up to the XO. Look, now I don't know for sure. I'm not going to cast any aspersions here, but in tasting this, I would say it's been adjusted slightly. But, oh wow, is it, you know, it's not even comprehensible that it's the same spirit. This is just more elegant, it's more refined. The nose just is inviting. It's just this fruity, stone fruity, apricot-y, peachy, florally kind of nose in there with a little, bearing in mind, it's 10 years, you know, 10 years, 4 years, 2 years, you know, so it has got that little bit of extra in it. But I don't get that. The floral notes, the fruity notes are what come off here. And then on the tasting, there is just this lovely fruitiness that comes off. No one, and I mean no one trying this, is going to be put off this. In the same way that an older rum would give you more, for me especially, you know, wet wood, soggy vibes, you know, real kind of wood burn on there. It doesn't happen for me with XO cognacs. I don't, some do, the longer age ones, Hors d'Age ones and reserves, they go a little bit too far for me, but I've never tasted an XO that I would think, oh, I'm not drinking that. This, if it wasn't so expensive, this is the gateway to the brandy category. This is flipping delicious. So I find myself in a weird juxtaposition with brandy, because it's like the question I asked at the start of the video, is it worth spending that extra money? If you want to sip brandy neat, hell yeah, because sipping the XO neat, and I can't wait to dive in. I've got a few other little bottles of XO up here. We've got Hennessy, we've got Remy Martin XO, you know, sipping those XOs neat is a totally different kettle of fish to sipping a VSOP or a VS. So for me, is it worth that upgrade? Oh God, yeah, but you are talking a lot of money. I can just go UK prices here. We're talking 140, 150 versus 40, 50 quid, 40 quid, yeah. So a lot more money, a hell of a lot more money, but it's a hell of a lot better than what these are. But again, there is something different coming up here, because in the very next video, I'm going to be doing a guided tour of the, I was going to say plantation and Maison Ferrand, Pierre Ferrand cognacs. And they don't really do VS and VSOPs and XOs. They have their own little thing going on. And actually the bottom three aren't that different in price. And I find them really delicious. So join me in this next video where we look at a different brand that doesn't really do the whole VS, VSOP and XO.